Panzer-Lehr was supposed to be Germany's armored answer to D-Day. By the time its tanks reached Normandy, the division was already broken, not in a tank battle, but on the roads beneath Allied aircraft. This is how the Allies crippled a panzer division by hitting fuel, movement, and command, and why the strike at Caine was the moment the counterattack died. When the Allies landed, OKW ordered Panzer-Lehr north immediately. The plan was straightforward: reach Normandy intact, concentrate near Caen, and drive the beachhead back into the sea before it could be reinforced. The division had the tanks, the crews, and the training to do it. What it needed was time and roads. That plan required roads. And the roads were already gone. In the weeks before D-Day, Allied bombers had cut France's rail network under the transportation plan. Bridges were down, marshalling yards were cratered, and repair crews could not keep pace. By the time Panzer-Lehr received its march orders, the only viable routes north were narrow secondary roads that had been under Allied air observation since before the landings. The air-ground system waiting for those columns was not designed to hunt tanks. It was designed to destroy everything that kept tanks operational. Typhoons hit bridges and vehicle columns with rockets. P-47s worked the roads with .50 caliber, targeting fuel trucks and ammunition trailers. A forward controller near the front passed grids to aircraft overhead by radio, and the response time was measured in minutes. Every downed bridge forced a detour. Every detour bunched the column. A slow, bunched column on a Normandy road in June 1944 was a target. The principle was not complicated. You did not need to destroy every tank. You needed to stop it from being fueled, resupplied, and directed. Strip those three things, and an armored division becomes a collection of vehicles that cannot coordinate, cannot sustain an attack, and cannot replace what it loses. That was the objective. The roads were where it was executed. Bayerlin later said his division took vehicle losses before it fired a shot in combat. Fuel trucks were hit on the approach. Ammunition trailers burned in roadside ditches. Repair sections were destroyed before they could reach the units they were meant to support. Elements of Panzer-Lehr arrived in the Caen sector already short of the services that made concentrated armored operations possible. The Germans moved at night and dispersed under trees by day. It cut losses, but it wrecked the timetable. Units arrived late and out of sequence. Coordination between columns broke down. The Luftwaffe could not contest Allied air superiority over the roads, and the daylight corridor the march required never reopened. June 7th, south of Caen. A column of trucks, half-tracks, and tanks moves in the last light, pushing to clear open ground before dawn. Two P-47s drop through a gap in the overcast, level out along the road, and open fire. A fuel truck takes a direct hit and stops. Drivers pull off the road. Typhoons arrive minutes later, called in by a ground controller, and put rockets into a stone bridge at a narrow bend. The span drops into the stream. The column halts. Vehicles behind push forward, compress, and stop when there is nowhere to go. Service trucks trying to find a bypass turn onto a farm track and sink in wet ground. The march order is already 2 hours behind, and it is not yet fully light. That night, the column moves again under blackout. A liaison aircraft finds the junction, drops a flare, and the road is marked for the next patrol. The column disperses into fields. The timetable no longer exists in any meaningful sense. By June 9th, Panzer Group West, the headquarters responsible for directing the armored counterattack, was managing a deteriorating situation from the only kind of position still available: off the roads, under cover, away from the routes that had cost so much already. General Geyer von Schweppenberg had settled his staff into an orchard and farm complex near the village of Caine, several kilometers behind the line. The buildings gave the staff room to work. The trees provided cover from aerial observation. Signals lines ran between the structures, connecting the headquarters to the armored units still moving north. Operations maps were current. From this position, Gehr intended to direct the concentrated counterattack once the columns finished closing. The location had been chosen with care. It had also been found 3 days earlier. Ultra-intercepts and low-level aerial reconnaissance had fixed the headquarters position before the staff finished moving in. On the afternoon of June 10th, RAF medium bombers arrived with Typhoon escorts. The first bombs walked across the buildings and dugouts. More followed in sequence. Dust rises through the apple trees. Papers cross the lane in the blast. A signals truck lies on its side at the edge of the orchard. Generalmajor von Dawans, the chief of operations, is killed in the strike. Gehr von Schweppenberg is wounded and pulled from rubble. The main command building is gone. Signals equipment is destroyed across the site. Staff officers who survive move between craters, trying to establish what still functions and who is still alive. The alternate command net takes hours to establish. During those hours, every German armored unit in the sector continues moving on orders that can no longer be updated. Local commanders make decisions without knowing what the units on their flanks are doing. Attacks that need 2 formations to move together cannot happen. Neither side of the line can reach the other. The counterattack that was supposed to drive the Allies back to the beaches has no nerve center. Units already arriving late and under strength now receive no direction at all. The counterattack did not fail later. It failed there. The window had been narrow from the start. By mid-June, the Allied beachhead was firm. Logistics were landing on schedule, and the balance of air power over the roads had not shifted. Panzer-Lehr fought on around Tilly-sur-Seulles and the approaches to Caen, but as disconnected units rather than a division. Resupply was intercepted. Local attacks went in without the fuel and artillery they needed. The formation held ground it could not exploit. At the end of July, Operation Cobra ended what remained. American heavy bombers saturated the German line south of Saint-Lô. Panzer-Lehr was directly under the bombardment. When it lifted, the division had lost most of its vehicles and combat strength in a single afternoon. After Caine, German armored headquarters dispersed, cut radio traffic, and relocated more frequently. It reduced the risk of a repeat strike, but compounded the coordination problems already degrading every operation. On the Allied side, the strike validated what the planners had argued since before the landings, that command posts and supply lines were the targets that decided armored battles, not tank hulls. Panzer-Lehr did not fail because its tanks were outmatched. It failed because the system required to fight those tanks, fuel, ammunition, command, coordination, was removed before the division could concentrate. Caine was not a strike on the margin of the battle. It was the moment the counterattack lost the ability to function. Air power in Normandy was not primarily a weapon against armor. It was a weapon against the conditions that made armor effective. That distinction determined the outcome. For more sober, system-level World War II breakdowns, subscribe.